Welcome everyone at this webinar that will be all about receipt and invoicing management made easy. My name is Wynand. I'm a project manager in Belgium, here in Grand Rosière. That means that I implement all kinds of projects, not only finance, but I have a background in finance, so most of the time I implement finance projects. So let's start, but before we dive into the subject of today, I would like to start with a little bit explaining the story of Odoo, because I guess there will be people joining today that maybe don't know Odoo yet. So what is Odoo and where we come from? Well, we started in 2007, and at the left side of this screen, you can see the 11 people that made the basics of what is Odoo right now. At the right side of the screen, you can see our co-founder and CEO, Fabien, which is still our CEO today. And what is nice about this picture as well, and that says a lot about the culture of Odoo, is that currently, even I think at least more than 9 people of them are still at Odoo right now. So that says a lot about our culture, I think. And the right side of the screen, you can see what Odoo looked like in 2007 when it was called Tiny ERP. You can see, of course, that the screens are not updated at the day we're living in today. So what did it become right now? Well, the next slide is all about how Odoo looks like right now. And on the left side, you can see basically the same picture as in 2007, but then updated in 2020. I think this picture is quite recent. It's about our Odoo experience of last year in October 2019. Because for the people that don't know what is Odoo experience, every year we launch our major release, which is all about a presentation of 2 or 3 days, in which we have a lot of presentations, a lot of workshops by experts that explain the new version of Odoo. We also release some minor versions during the year, but the biggest event is in October, where we explain all about our new version. And as we're in September right now, well, the next upcoming Odoo experience is in a few weeks, so stay tuned and try to subscribe, because it's an event you can really not miss. Of course, at the left side, we don't only have employees, because Odoo is also a huge community about partners that implement Odoo all over the world. So you can see here what it became several years later. And at the right side, you can see what Odoo looks like right now. We have built several new applications, an application for every business need, and we're going to jump into it right now. So, also some figures. The headquarters of Odoo are here in Grand Rosière. It's a little town in Belgium. We also have an office in Brussels and recently opened one in Antwerp. That are more commercial offices. We also have an office in Luxembourg, and from these offices we cover, let's say, Europe and Africa. At the left side of the globe, we have an office in San Francisco and New York, and we recently opened also an office in Buffalo and in Mexico City. We have an office in Dubai as well, for the Emirates, and at the right side of the globe we have an office in Hong Kong and India that cover that part of the world. So, what does it mean in figures? Well, first of all, we still have an annual growth of 67%, which is huge, and in order to continue that growth, well, we recruit a lot of people. I think we have still an average of 1 person a day that we recruit worldwide. So, recently we obtained the cap of 1,000 employees worldwide, but you can imagine that it's quite difficult to keep this slide updated. So at the day of today, we are already more than 1,000 persons, but it's too difficult to update those figures as it's going so fast. As I mentioned, not only Odoo employees, we work also with a lot of partners, which result today in more than 2,500 partners that implement Odoo all over the world in more than 130 countries. But I think that the most important figure on this slide is that currently more than 5 million people are using Odoo on a daily basis. So that's it for the commercial part. Let's jump into the subject of today. And I just added one slide to explain you what we're going to see today. So Odoo is not only a finance software. We have a business application for everything, but what we're going to see today is how you can add documents in Odoo, like invoices, like expense notes, and like vendor bills. You can decide to have them scanned by our artificial intelligence and our OCR in order to limit the manual interaction of your employees, of your accountants, so that all information that is on the picture is immediately recognized by Odoo, so that the part of filling in all the information is taken over completely by the artificial intelligence and the OCR. If you want, you can add some validation workflows before it's sent finally to one of our core applications, which is the accounting, so that everything is created and all journal entries are created thanks to the artificial intelligence. Also, you can add your banks to Odoo so that you don't have to import any bank transactions anymore, but that we will connect immediately on your bank and get all banking transactions immediately in Odoo, so that you don't have to take care anymore of those imports and you just configure once the connection with your bank. And finally, if everything is in accounting, well, you can have, of course, beautiful dashboards that will take over all the information in Odoo, or send follow-up reminders to your customers, as well as get information out of there about your payments, so that you can just upload it on your bank and that you don't have to fill in all information again that is already existing in Odoo. But what is even more important is that you have a business application for everything, so that you can handle all your business processes in Odoo. The customer, yourself as an entrepreneur, your accountant, your internal accountant, but also your external accountant can work immediately with you in the same database, because we are a cloud-based software, so that he can connect on the same database, so that he don't have to do all the work that you already did, or you can benefit of the work that he did, and he's not working in another application as yourself. So you don't have to export any more information outside of Odoo to send to your accountant. If you just give him access to the database as well, you can work both together on the same database. So what can I say else than start with the demonstration to show you everything that I explained during the slide. So therefore, we're going to change the screen, and first of all, I'm starting in a mailbox, not in Odoo. Why? Because I think more and more documents are sent digitally, and one of the channels that is the most used, at least till today, is emails. Well, Odoo can connect to your emails, and it has a lot of benefits, because most of the time invoices or documents are not always sent to the correct person. For invoices, it could be the accountant, but not always your suppliers have the email address of your accountants, so they will send it to you as an entrepreneur, or maybe to the manager of the department that made the purchase, so it's always coming to different kind of persons. But at the end, the vendor bills need to arrive in the hands of the accountant. Well, instead of opening every time every email, and I have two emails here, for example, let's open the first one, an email from Apple Service Desk, which sent me an email for the purchase of my brand new MacBook Pro. Well, instead of opening the email, opening the document, printing it or saving it at least on my disk, printing it on paper, getting it together all in a binder, and maybe bring it to my accountant at the end of my VAT period, the only thing I have to do is just forward this email to a specific email alias. That's exactly what we're going to do. I'm just forwarding this email to an email alias that I created before. You're free to choose the email, of course. I'm going to send the first one, and I'm going to send the second one. And from here, your job is done. The email is forwarded to the address. It will create, we will see later, it will create a vendor bill immediately in Odoo. It will add the attachment, and the artificial intelligence will try to recover all necessary information so that you don't have to input it yourself anymore. So from there on, let's jump into Odoo. And I have a little scoop right here, because I have the honor to present you already our newest version that will come out in a few weeks. So it's the first time we give a webinar in our brand new Odoo 14. So we might have some latency for some imports, because our developers are still working all day in order to have the version finalized on time. So if we encounter some latency, it's because we're still working on this version. So what you see here is a dashboard of an Odoo database. You will see immediately the applications that are installed. And for this webinar, I installed the application, the document application, the accounting application, as well as the expense application. We send out the vendor bills. Let's start first with our expenses. So I open the expense application right here, and you can see immediately on the screen that everything that we're going to see today is also possible with our mobile application. Our mobile application is free to download on the Apple Store or on the Google Play Store, so that your employees can just download the application and use your smartphone in order to take pictures from your receipts. So by taking the picture, it will be uploaded immediately on the database so that the artificial intelligence can scan it. For the demonstration here, I will not use my mobile phone because it will be difficult for you to follow. So another possibility to upload documents in Odoo is just to use, of course, the upload button. It's exactly what we're going to do here. I have 4 expenses, 4 receipts, 3 for restaurant and 1 for parking fees. So I can just select them all together and click on open. This way, we will upload the images on the database so that they are not stored locally anymore, but they are hosted in the cloud so that they are available everywhere. But it's not only uploaded, we will also send them immediately through our OCR. So let's see what happened. We have 4 expenses here that have been created, 1 for parking fees and 3 for restaurant. When I open the first one, what is great about our views in Odoo is that you have always a view on the image itself. So at the right side, you will see the image of the ticket, and at the left side, right here, this is the input screen that should be filled in by your employees or by yourself in order to give the necessary information in Odoo. Before we're going to see what our OCR can capture on the expenses, let's go first to our 4 expenses. So I have 1 for restaurant, another 1 for restaurant, another 1 for restaurant, and the last one as well. So we can see that the quality of the expense ticket is not so good, but even then, Odoo should capture it because our artificial intelligence has a very nice algorithm. So let's see what happened. I have the update status button right here. You must imagine that every 5 minutes, in order to avoid some latency on the database, it's only turning every 5 minutes that it will update the status of the OCR recognition. But if you don't want to wait as long, you can just click on the update status. Now when you click on the update status, you will see what happened, and a lot of information has been filled in automatically, so let's explain how this arrived right here. First of all, the unit price. Well, the 9.70 euros was captured immediately from the ticket. So we captured the amount, we captured the expense date, we capture a bill reference, but it's not necessary, it's just to give a specific reference if you want. The most important is the date and the amount. But if you're not an accountant, it might be difficult for you to know how you have to process these tickets in the accounting. Well, something that is not visible in the OCR is that our artificial intelligence will categorize every ticket in 8 specific categories that happen behind the scenes. So they are chosen by Odoo, and we have, for example, food, restaurant, travel, for example. We have like 8 categories like that. And the user that using the database can link it to a specific product. Now, what's a product? The product has been chosen here, thanks to this category. What is the advantage of using a product? That you have the possibility to add some information on the product. So when I click on it, I arrive in the product itself. You have some information that is not specifically necessary right here, but on the accounting part, I can give a specific expense account to this product. So basically what happened, thanks to the category that the artificial intelligence found, well, the product is linked, which means that the expense account, as you can see over here, is taking over from the product. So by validating your expenses, you don't even have to know what should happen in the accounting, because you configure it once on your product, the artificial intelligence will take care of the product, and you can just submit them, and all accounting entries behind the scenes will be created. So we have a first one about parking, but of course they are not all about parking fees. We have another one for restaurant. You can see here as well, the quality of the expense is not quite good, but after all, we find the amount, we find the expense date, and we find the bill reference over there. And we categorized it as restaurant, so the expense account is different. Well, for the third one, we find everything except for the expense date. So this one I will fill in manually. So I think it's a ticket of the 10th of July. So this one I will fill in manually. But also here, the amount, the category has been found correctly. And finally, the last one, also here, the quality is not quite good, but he found the amount, he found the expense date, as well as the bill reference. So from here on, the only thing that I had to put in manually was one date for one of my tickets. So when they are all validated, I can just select the expenses that I want to send through a validation process, for example. So I can select the expenses that I want to recover. You can just select them all together, create a report, so that we create one report for one payment that you want to be reimbursed. So here we're gonna edit because I can give a name to the expense. So for example, it are expenses of September 2020. And upon here, it is in the status of submitted, which means that if you configured some approval rules, well, your manager, for example, receives automatically a notification that you have added some expenses and that he needs to approve. In order to not change accounts, etc., I'm just connected here as an administrator, so I can validate my own expenses. So I can approve it. Normally, of course, your employee will not have this button, and based upon who you configured as being his manager, will be able to approve it. So I'm going to approve it, which is the next stage, and from here on, the accountant have access to your expenses because you validate it, so he can select all expenses together. I only have one expense report here, so I'm just going to process the journal entries right here, but of course the accountant can select all the expenses that have been submitted all together in order to post the journal entries. So from here on, we actually worked behind the scenes in the accounting application because we sent the expenses to the accounting and we created all the necessary journal entries, the accounting entries behind the scenes based upon the product chosen and the account linked to your employee. So all accounting entries are done, but as from here on, your accountant can also register a payment for one expense note or again for all of them together. We're going to do that by choosing that. You can choose the bank that you want to use for the payment and you can just create the payment. Now, what happened now is that the expense note is in the status paid, which means that we created the payment and your accountant can select all the validated payments all together, create a batch file. In Europe, we use the SIPA file, which basically means that we create a digital file with all necessary information in there, the bank account, the amount, the reference that you want to use for your payment, so that you can just export this file, upload it on your bank, and all information is taken over for the payments, so that you don't have to fill them in manually anymore. You can just validate the payment so that your bank will execute all payments. That said, about expenses, I'm going to switch back to the dashboard, and we're going to dive into the accounting application. So this is the dashboard of the accounting application. What you can see here, we have several blocks. Every block corresponds to an accounting journal. Well, what we can see immediately on this journal is that we have two bills to validate. The accountant can immediately see the bills that he has to validate. So let's click on them. And when we click on them, we can see that we have two bills to validate. Well, I can see where it comes from. So as you remember, I sent two mails before. So this is the first way of connecting documents with Odoo, that you can just send by email and you can see where the email comes from. The accountant has at every moment an overview of all bills that have been sent and he can see where it comes from. So we're going to open it, and this screen is a little bit similar as for the expenses because at the right side you can see the image of the invoice. So these are the two invoices that I send over by mail. At the left side, you can also see the input screen, and if we scroll a little bit down, we can see our chatter. I will discuss this one a little bit later, but basically the idea of the chatter is that we keep all communication on the right place in Odoo, on the right side, centralized on the correct document. So because I send these vendor bills by email, well, the email itself is also added and saved in the chatter, so that later on, in a week, in a month, maybe even in a year, if you have any questions about it, you can always go back to that vendor bill and you will see all communication that was linked to it. But anyway, let's go up again, because also here, of course, we have our OCR that can help you by creating all the necessary information to validate this vendor bill. So also here, we have an action that will turn every 5 minutes. If you want to refresh the data before, you can just click on refresh, and all invoices processed by the OCR will be processed after the refresh. Now, what happened here? The expense note had only a few information because we don't need so much information on expense note. But for a vendor bill, there is way more information. The first one, and the most important one, I think, is the vendor. You can see that immediately by using the OCR, Odoo added the vendor. Now, how do we add the vendor? Well, first of all, we're going to see if the vendor already existed in the database. How do we look for him? We don't only look for the name, we also match on address, on email, and as well on the website. So we have several information in order to put the right vendor on your vendor bill. But if it doesn't exist, you don't even have to create it. In Europe, we have the possibility to connect on the VIS platform, which is the European VAT platform. And because all information of the vendor is existing there, well, thanks to the VAT number that we catch on the vendor bill, we will create the vendor for you, so that you don't even have to create your suppliers anymore. The OCR will take care of it immediately. So first field, vendor. But of course this is not everything. We also add the bill reference. So the bill reference is immediately taking over from the invoice, the bill date, as well as the due date. And besides those fields, well, we also scan the lines so that you can take over a label that we can find over here, an amount without VAT. If the VAT code exists, I'm working here in a Belgium localization, so it's a Belgium VAT code. But if the 21% exists as a tax code, in the database, we also add the tax code, which results that we have the amount without VAT, the VAT, as well as the total amount. So basically, everything is taking over to validate this invoice. The only part that can change is the expense account. As we've seen with the expenses, we use the products in order to take over the expense account so that you don't have to take care of it. It's a little bit more difficult to do that with vendor bills because you can have so much different purchases and we want you to avoid to create a product for all of them. So in that fact, there is an artificial intelligence that will work behind the scenes and it will remember the expense account used for your supplier. So basically, the first time he take over a default expense account, but it will be different, so you can just change it by editing the invoice, for example. You can just click on the field, you can search for it based upon the account number or based upon the name. And by selecting the account, the first time that you select it, after that you validate the invoice, there is an artificial intelligence behind the scenes that will remember the expense account used, and it's not only used for the supplier because you can have vendor bills with multiple lines and different expense accounts. No, it's even way more interesting because it's a combination of the label. The label is in my case communications. It's a combination of the label and the supplier that will make sure that the next time that you create an invoice, Odoo will propose you the correct expense account. So basically everything is covered by our OCR and our artificial intelligence. So let's jump to the second bill. For the moment I only used the mouse. Of course we also have shortcuts in Odoo. So if you touch the Alt tab, you can see everywhere where you're working in Odoo that we have keyboard shortcuts. So if you prefer to work only with your keyboard, it's also possible. So you can just see at every view what shortcuts are available. So if I want to jump to the next invoice, I can see at the top right that it's Alt-N to jump into the next one. So we jump to the next one, and also here I can see that all information is taken over from the Apple invoice. The vendor has been filled in, the bill reference, the bill date, the due date, and also the lines, amount, VAT, everything is taken over. So let's jump back to the first one. And now we're going to validate these invoices because currently they are in draft. If I want to validate them to the accounting, I can just say Alt-V to pause them, jump to the next one, and validate this one as well. And this is basically what I want to show you for the vendor bills and how you can interact your email servers with Odoo. So let's jump back to the dashboard because I told you that we have a business application for everything. Basically accounting covers already a lot, so it's not only getting documents into Odoo thanks to expense notes or vendor bills, you can also use Odoo to use your invoicing management. So I have another journal here to create customer invoices. So I'm just going to create a customer invoice to show you how fast it goes and how you can use it. So you can just select the customer, for example Odoo, and you can add the lines to construct your customer invoice. Well, in this case, for customer invoices, well, the products can be very handy because most of the time you're going to sell always the same stuff or the same services. So you can create a product up front. For example, I created licenses and I created another product that is about services. What is great about the products again is that they can have all of them their own revenue account, as well as another price, another tax code, so that you don't have to fill it in every time over and over again. But more interesting is that you as an entrepreneur or maybe as a manager, you don't know how these customer invoices need to be created in accounting. So by just configuring once with your account onto products, you can draft the customer invoice and validate it, because the accounts and the VAT codes are immediately taking over from the product. So if you're done, you can just validate the customer invoice, and from here on you can decide to send it immediately to your customer. Because we have incoming emails, of course we use also outgoing emails. Just click on send and print, and we will create you an email, pre-configured email that you can decide, where we take some interesting fields in there, like the number of the invoice, the amount, etc. And we also create the PDF of the invoice that is sent to the email linked to your customer. So you can just send it from Odoo, so that you send the invoice immediately with an email, with your own email, to the customer that will receive it in his mailbox. So you don't have to use your own mailbox next to it. Okay, here we maybe have to wait a little bit. Okay, now that's created. Well, once the email is sent, we also print the invoice. So you can see it a little bit similar as for the vendor bills. At the right side, you can see the invoice that we created in just 3 clicks. And in the chatter, as I mentioned before, we keep track of the email that you send to your customer, so that it's always on the right spot, on the right place on your customer invoice. But this is the outgoing communication with your customer. What if he answers? Well, even if he answers, the answer of your customer will be saved exactly on the same place, also in the chatter. So that means that you can start a communication with your customer immediately in Odoo, and you don't need your mailbox anymore. Because how many times does it arrive that you have to search in your mailbox, where you have thousands of emails, to search for exactly the correct email that you're looking for, that is all about this customer invoice. Once you find it, you didn't want the original the original email, sorry, but you wanted the reply. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just jump into Odoo, jump into the correct invoice, and all communication will be centralized on the invoice itself. But this is only for external communication. Of course, there is some information that you want to keep into the database and you want to just share with your colleagues or with some people, not with all of them. You want to be sure that it cannot be visible for your customers. Well, we have some buttons over here in the chatter, so you can also use the log node button, where you can just, as we call it, ping someone. If you type add, you will see all the users of the database. Well, in this case, I'm the only user. So, but if you select the user and you type something, for example, keep an eye on this. If you log that node, well, also that node will stay forever in the chatter. And you can see that the name of the person that you pinged on there is green, which basically means that they receive an email notification. And in the email, they have a link, and if they click on the link, they will arrive immediately in Odoo at the right spot. Besides that, what is great also about our chatter is that you can use and add activities, schedule activities everywhere, and you can keep track of them. So if you create here, if you click on the button schedule activity, we have some activity types that you can of course change or add some activity types. So for example, if I say activity type call, I can set a due date on there, and I can again assign it to a user of the database, but I'm the only one here. In your case, if you have multiple employees, of course, you will find all your employees, and you can decide to plan the activity for a specific person. Also here we can type something, please call him to pay the invoice. No. If you schedule the activity, also the activity will remain here. But what is great about the activities is that they are, of course, concerning a specific person. And that person will find immediately all activities that he has to do that are late, that are to do today, or that are to do in the future. He can immediately find it over here, click on his activities, and get an overview of all activities that he has to process. Once that he's done the activity, well, he can just mark it as done and say, okay, he'll pay. He can click on done, and the activity is done. What is great about it is that you will see at every time who has validated the activity and the feedback that he added. So To finalize this, we can also add as many documents as we want in a chatter. So in this case, I already have some documents because I send the email to the customer, so the PDF file is already attached. But if you want to add, for example, a contract with this customer, you can just add as many attachments as you wish, and they are all gathered together, centralized on the right place on the customer invoice. So this is our chatter, and this is the possibilities to use your invoicing also with Odoo. Please keep in mind that this chatter is everywhere in Odoo. If we are here on a customer invoice, it can be on a vendor bill, it can be on a contact form, it can be on any journal entry, it can be everywhere. So everywhere, all information is immediately centralized on the right place. Okay, so let's jump back to the dashboard, because we saw the expense application, we saw part of the accounting application, we also have the document application. Let's open it, and what is great about our document application is that you can figure it completely based upon how you want to treat your documents internally. You can add as many workspaces as you want. I have one for finance, for HR, for marketing here, and every workspace has its own tags, what we call tags. You can add tags to documents in order to filter easily exactly the documents that you want to see. So we have different tags for finance, as for HR, for example, as for marketing. You can completely configure them all based upon your own configuration. But I also have an internal inbox here where we have some documents. For example, we have the invoices for a quarter, we have some supplier contracts, and we have an employee contract also, for example. Well, what is great about your document, about our document application, is that you can use, for example, as we do internally at Odoo, we can use a third party that scan all our incoming mail. So all our incoming mail arrives at a third party, which basically scan all the paper mail that we receive, and they just send it over exactly the same as we did with the vendor bills. They just send it over to a specific email alias, and this email alias will make sure that all documents arrive, for example, in this case, in the workspace internal. So then the person that is responsible to distribute the mail internally at Odoo is the only one that has access to this workspace, because you can give access rights to workspaces so that only the correct people can access the correct workspace. So it's our job at that moment to distribute the mail to the correct department. So for example, we have an employee contract here. If we click on it, we can just click on the action button right here and send it to HR. If we click over there, well, the document will be removed from the internal workspace and will be added at the HR workspace. Also here we have a contract for marketing contract and some publicity for marketing. Well, this one we can send to the marketing department. And we will have some invoices, so I think we're going to send those to the finance department. So when clicking over here, inbox is clean and everything has been sent to the correct department. We have in the finance department the invoices, in the HR department we have the employee contract, and for marketing we have our two other contracts. Now, of course, within a department, not everybody can have access to all documents. So on a document itself, the person, again the same person, or the manager of the department, I let you decide, well, it can add a responsible owner to the document. So in this case, again, I'm the only employee here, I'm the only user of the database, but every employee internally will have their own user, so that you can select the correct user that is administrator of this document, and they will only see the documents that are attributed to them as an owner. So in that way, you can be completely paperless, have all your mail scanned by a third party, get them in Odoo, and use our actions in order to get them to the right departments and the right persons. So let's jump into the finance folder, because there is also something else that I wanted to show here. I already showed you how we can interact invoices with Odoo, but I only showed some cases when we have one PDF for one vendor bill. Let's imagine that you just want to scan all your bills together and you have a huge PDF file with all invoices in there. Well, then you have to split it afterwards in order to have one page for one vendor bill. It's exactly, the same with this PDF file here. So let's open it. And we can see we have a PDF file here with 9 pages. Well, it's one PDF file for 9 pages. We'll have to split it first. So we have a nice feature for that. You can just click on the split PDF button. And basically, Odoo will split the document in different pages, in this case, one page per document. If it's not correct, you can easily change it and say, for example, no, these 3 are one invoice and the last 2 is 2 pages for invoice. So you can easily use it or bring it back if you want to split the invoices based upon what you can see on the screen. Also on the top right button, if there are some blank pages, for example, or some pages that you don't want to use, you can just deselect them so they are not treated. I'm just going to leave them so that we treat all of them. And from here on, I have access to the same action buttons as I have in my workspace. So I can just decide to split the document, so that the document will be splitted in the finance folder, but I can immediately send also the splitted files to the accounting. And it's exactly what I'm going to do here. So when I click on the Create Bill button, well, you can see that the PDF file has been splitted based upon what I selected, but from at the same moment, I will send all documents from our document application to our accounting application. So all applications that we've seen are completely integrated together. And now, basically, we have a view from the accounting. And if I open the first one, well, we can see the same screen as before, and you can see based upon the split, I have one for 2 pages, I have one of 1 page, one of 1 page, and it's completely splitted based upon what I configured before. And from here on, you can see immediately that our OCR is already processing these invoices so that the accountant can start working on vendor bills that are already captured by the OCR, and all fields will have been filled in. So let's jump back to the invoices and let's jump back to the document application. Because what you can see now is that the huge PDF file has been splitted based upon our split configuration, but we also added some tags immediately on them just by clicking on the Create Bill button, so that we immediately qualified it as a validated invoice, as a bill, and a bill for 2020, so that later on we can easily filter on the correct tags in order to have exactly the documents that you want. And if later on you want to see to what accounting entry this bill is linked, well, you can just select the PDF, and at the right side here you will obtain at every moment the link to the accounting. So there is a complete configuration, integration between both of them. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show you here is another possibility of adding documents into Odoo. What is great about emails is that it's fast and you receive most of documents by email. But sometimes the problem with emails is that you have a problem of a size. The size of the email is too big, so you cannot send it. Well, in that case, you can just create in a few clicks a shared link that you can share with everybody you want, and they can just upload the documents on the link and it will arrive at the correct place in Odoo. So let's do that right now. Just select the workspace, internal, and I want the documents that are uploaded with the shared link that not only come into the internal workspace, but they receive also the tag inbox immediately, so I can filter on them. Select the workspace, select the tag, and click on share. When you click on share, you can allow only downloads, but you can also allow uploading with this link. As we've seen before, you can also here add a specific email, so that if users send an email to that email alias, well, it will create a document in the internal workspace with the tag inbox. But we already seen it, and I want to show something else. So we also created always a unique URL that you can just copy and share with whatever person you want. So let's open this one in another tab. By opening it, you will receive this screen, and you can basically share it with everybody. They don't need a user of the database, so it can be internal employees, it can be your suppliers also, it can be other persons that you want to share this link to. They can just upload documents immediately on your database. So let's take, for example, again, my receipt of the expenses, open them, and we will load them immediately back into the database. So they are not stored locally anymore. We uploaded them in the cloud, and when we take back the screen that we had before and we refresh the page, well, we can see that the images immediately arrived in the correct internal inbox with the tag inbox. So the person that is responsible again to finalize the flow can select all the expenses and, for example, send them to finance, and his job is done. And this is another way of interacting documents with Odoo. So last but not least, let's jump back to accounting, because we've seen how to send vendor bills and how to process them. We've seen how to create customer invoices and how to send them and interact with customers. We've seen how we can upload by mobile or on other ways expenses in Odoo. Now let's see how we can interact with our banks. So I have a bank here, which is already connected, so it's already synchronized. Therefore, I'll take another screen, for example, with a bank that is not yet configured. Well, to configure and synchronize your bank, it is that easy to just click on Configure. When you click on Configure, well, based upon the country you're working on, I'm working in Belgium, so immediately I will receive all available banks for synchronization. Now, how does it work? You can just select your bank and click on Connect. Well, for the moment in Europe, we're working with Ponto. Ponto is a Belgian company which is already certified for the new European technology DSP2, which basically means that they can obtain access to all European banks. They don't have access already to all European banks, but are adding more and more banks that come available in short time, but there are already, the major banks are already covered by them. So, if you're interested in synchronizing your banks with Ponto, you just have to create an account with them and fill in your client and your secret ID that you receive from Ponto. Nothing else to do, just fill them in, click on continue, and from there on you will be able to go back for 3 months in time in order to synchronize your banks from 3 months in the past. Nothing else to do, and as from that moment, every 4 hours, Odoo will connect to your bank and get an import, actually, synchronize all your out and incoming bank transactions. So you don't have to import any documents, any Excel files or any Coda files in Belgium, for example. You don't have to import anything anymore. We will take care of your bank transactions and get them immediately into Odoo. If you're interested to know how it works, you can just click on this link here, so that you can obtain a little document how you can synchronize your bank statements with Ponto. So just get on the website of my Ponto and create a contract with them. I think there is a little cost linked to it currently with Ponto. I think it's €4 a month per bank account. But keep in mind that it's only temporary, because Odoo is also certifying ourselves to become DSP compatible, so that we don't have to go through Ponto anymore, but we will synchronize the banks immediately through Odoo when we will have this certification, and it should arrive very shortly. So first things first, bank transactions will come into Odoo. Well, the only thing that you have to do after is, of course, reconcile them with the correct open amounts. And therefore, you will see at every moment on your dashboard, you will see all bank transactions that need to be reconciled. So in this case, I have 3 items that still need to be reconciled. You can immediately click over here, and when you click over there, you come in the reconciliation screen of Odoo. So of course, you can imagine, for a demonstration, I have 3 payments. Well, we created 2 vendor bills before, and we have 1 expense note before. But what is important here, it's not a demonstration. It is the real live way how Odoo works. Because the bank transactions existed before I created the invoices. We make the reconciliation with invoices based upon, first of all, the reference. Because I use the correct reference for my payment, well, Odoo will search into the database for this reference, and he will add immediately the correct supplier and the correct bill to the payment. So the only thing you have to do, if the reference is correct, the only thing you should do is just validate and validate again. So that behind the scenes, all accounting entries have been created and the reconciliation between the payment and the vendor bill has been done. For the expenses, it's a little bit different because there is no bill reference. So how can we make now the link with the correct expense note for the correct person? Well, we also match immediately based upon the account number, because the account number is used and is imported in Odoo when we synchronize our bank, and also the account number is saved on the contact form. Well, we make the synchronization between the contact and the open amount, if it's exactly the same amount as the payment, with all open expense amounts that exist. So also here, you can just validate and your job is done. So it's a little bit easy to explain the bank reconciliation. There are way more possibilities to let Odoo help you reconcile payments with the correct open amounts or also the correct accounting accounts. But it's not the scope of today, I think. The most important ones is that we try to match as much as possible based upon reference and account number. So basically that's it, what I wanted to show during this demonstration. So let's jump back into the slides, because there is one more thing that I would like to discuss with you. As I showed you, as I explained you in the beginning, the huge advantage of Odoo is that your accountant can work with you in the same database. In order to work each of you on his own site, maybe on his own software, we have the possibility to grant access to your accountant in the same database so that he can benefit from your work and you can benefit from his work. You don't have to export anything else anymore from Odoo and send to your accountant because you immediately have access to the database itself. And therefore, because we really want to push and to have accountants onboarded on Odoo, well, for about a year or a year and a half ago, we launched an offer for fiduciaries, for accounting firms, which is still available. And the offer is quite easy. It is a 100% free offer for accounting firms because we really want to have them on board and to use Odoo to manage all their customers as well. Basically, what is foreseen in this offer is that everything that you've seen today, access to the accounting application as well as a document application, is offered for them for free for a number of database. There is no limited, for an unlimited number of databases as well as for an unlimited number of users. It's all granted for them for free. So it means the accounting application, the dashboard of their accountants, of their customers, the banking interfaces as from the moment that we will have the certification, because currently we need to go by Ponto, the document management system, also the customer portal, which I didn't show here because it's not the purpose of this demonstration, but they have also a customer portal where they can follow up all their customers. But what is even more important is that we offer the hosting and the maintenance of all those databases as well. So we do this. Why? Why do we do this? Because we really want accountants to have on board as well, and because we're sure that by changing this and having accountants and customers working on the same database, you can really benefit from the real power of Odoo and working in only one software altogether. So if you're interested, don't hesitate to spam Antoine. His email is right here, so it's ahu at odoo.com. So don't hesitate to send them a mail if you are an accounting firm or if your accountant is interested in this offer, because it's not only 100% free offer about the software itself. We also offer for some countries, for the moment it's Belgium, France, the Netherlands, as well as Luxembourg. We offer accompaniment for onboarding the accountant and to have them trained in Odoo and to use all the power of Odoo, that they are well trained. We offer the accompaniment for free, but it's an offer for accounting firms all over the world, because there is also in our e-learning a specific e-learning for accounting firms, which basically means that they can onboard themselves with a 10 steps videos. They can onboard themselves on how to use Odoo in their accounting firm. So that's it that I wanted to show you and learn you during this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to end this webinar with a little quiz that we created about this webinar. So there will be 3 questions that you can answer, and then we can discuss the answers in order to see if you had the correct ones. And also during the quiz, I will answer the questions that that are not yet answered in the chat here. So to do that, please connect yourself to www.odoo.com/s/8499. I will open the survey here. So normally I should see if you are connected, so you can connect still to the link. It's at the right top corner here, and you will see the first question arriving. So in the meantime, I will pick one question from the pad and try to answer it correctly. So the first question I will answer is this email processing feature available in V13? From Peter. Yes, Peter, the email is already available in Odoo 13, so there is nothing new about it in Odoo 14. The email alias is quite easy to configure. You can just, if I jump back to Odoo, you can just go on the journal itself. So you can do it for customer invoices as well as for vendor bills. So just go on the specific journal. You can go to the settings, to the configuration of that journal. And if you go in the advanced settings, you will see here the email alias that you can create. So Normally, if you're working in an Odoo SaaS database, you will use the email servers of Odoo, so that basically the domain name will be proposed immediately by Odoo. Because I'm working here on a local database, I just configured my own email servers, my Gmail account, for example, and that I used to create an alias for it. But if you're just using Odoo Standard in our SaaS version or in our Odoo SH version, you can use the email servers, the standard email servers of Odoo, so that the domain name is already given to you by Odoo, and basically you just have to fill in the alias that you want. So most of the time people fill in purchases, which means that the email alias will be purchases at the name of your database.odoo.com. So you can already use it in Odoo 13. There is nothing new about that in Odoo 14. So let's see if some of you already answered the quiz. I think I have to refresh the page. Okay. So I think 17 persons already answered, 15 already answered. So how can you exchange documents with Odoo? Well, indeed, I think it was pretty much an easy question. Of course, all of the above. So first of all, through the mobile app. Basically, it's more for the expenses, but anyway, everything that we've seen in the URL version, you can use it with your smartphone as well. So also the documents application, for example, is available in our mobile application, so you can upload all documents by your mobile as well. By email, indeed, it's possible, thanks to the email aliases that you can set, or you can set it on journals, so that it's immediately sent to the correct journal, or you can use it in the document application in order to send documents immediately on the right side in the workspace. The shared link, indeed, I showed, and by uploading it, indeed, it's possible as well. So I think most of you were correct, and it's indeed all of the above. So let's jump to the next question. The next question is all about the bank synchronization. So what can you do thanks to the bank synchronization? I leave you a few minutes to answer the question. So I will take another question by someone in the pad. It's a question from Hiron. Is the OCR feature there in V13? Well, basically it's even already existing since Odoo V12. So yes, it's existing for Odoo 13. It was already existing for Odoo 12, and of course it will still be available for Odoo 14. What is different here is that the OCR and the artificial intelligence for expense note is a new feature in Odoo 14. So you had the possibility to use the OCR for vendor bills in Odoo 13, but expenses will only be available in Odoo 14. What is great about the OCR, by the way, is that it's using basically another server, so that it's not immediately linked to an Odoo version, and we can update the algorithm immediately separate from versions. So everything that is possible basically in Odoo 13, you will have the same result in Odoo 12, because it's not linked to a version, it's linked to an algorithm on a separate server, so you should have the same impact on cross versions. Okay, so I'll handle the question about the bank synchronization. So the answers were you can reconcile in and, I cannot read it, but I think it was in and outgoing payments. The second one is reconcile in and outgoing bank transactions. And the third question is all of the above. Well, I'm not sure what was the first answer here, if I can see it, because it's a little bit long. I don't know if the first one was bank transactions or payments, but in this case, I have to disappoint you, because it's not all of the above yet. Currently, with the bank synchronization, you have to know that this new DSP2 technology is quite new, and it's quite difficult to be certified in order to obtain the certification. So the certification will be in two steps. The first one is all about bank transactions, and there is a higher level, even more security, because of course we're touching bank transactions. It's even more difficult to obtain it. It's about the payments. So in the first step, and currently with Ponto, you can sync your bank transactions, but you will not be able to sync your payments. So we have the possibility to create a payment file in a SEPA format, export the payment file and upload it to your bank to execute the payments, but you cannot immediately send the payments from Odoo to the bank. There is still the step that you have to create the file export it and import it on your bank. But in a second stage, we will also, once that we've received the certification for the bank transactions, Odoo will also continue the certifications for the payments, so that you don't use to export a file anymore and import it on your bank, but that you can execute the payments immediately from Odoo, and that they will basically be deducted from your bank immediately. So currently, no. In the future, yes. So stay tuned about the payments in the future. Let's jump to the third and last question. That's a question that I have not covered exactly during the webinar, so I am curious what you will answer on this one. So what is the actual recognition rate of our OCR? I'm happy to see your results and to see what you think about our OCR. So I will answer also a third question during this. We currently use Odoo 13. It's a question of Musa. We currently use Odoo 13 accounts. Is it possible to get expenses and documents app for free? So basically the answer is no, but I will explain you the idea behind it. Since the beginning of Odoo, we always work with the one-app free principle. So as long as you have only one application, as long as you use only one application, your database will remain for free forever with limited users. So it's nothing new. You can just go on odoo.com, start and try it now. As long as you just select one application, it can be CRM, it can be accounting, it can be sales, purchase, e-commerce, website, whatever. As long as you select only one application, well, the database will be for free with limited users. So nothing new here. The only thing that we adapted specifically for accounting firms is that when you use the one-app free offer for accounting, well, because we want accountants to be completely paperless, we offer them the documents application as well. So it's not really a one-app free model because we offer documents as well, but we made this specific offer also for them because we want to be sure that they can have all their accounting paperless. But in any way, expenses combined with any of these applications will never be free because, and it's maybe good that you asked the question, because what's the principle of the one-app free is that you remain for free as long as you don't add an additional application. So if you have a database, and for accountants, we have accountants that have more than 100 free databases for their customers, but they stay with accounting and document application only. If the customer decides, without any obligation, if the customer decides to add, for example, website and e-commerce because he wants to add his e-commerce on Odoo as well, but that's from that moment, only that database becomes payable and you need to take a contract with Odoo. So it's only on the moment that you add the next application that it becomes payable. But anyway, to answer to your question, the combination of expenses and documents applications is not for free, because if you select only documents, well, then it will remain for free only as long as you use documents, and the same for expenses. You can add the application expenses for free, but it will remain for free only as long as you don't add documents. So I think we have the results for the third question, and I'm pretty glad to see the results. There's one person that thinks that it's 55%. I hope at least that you wanted me to say that you were wrong, because it's of course a low percentage. 75 is already a little bit higher, but indeed the correct answer is 95%. So currently we have a recognition rate of 95%. Which is huge and which is tested on a batch of more than 600 invoices in order to arrive at this result. So the margin to arrive at 100 is really small, and I think it can only become better in the future, because there is really a department of developers working around the clock in order to make the algorithm even better every time over and over again. So they will still try to improve it in order to climb even higher. But what is important to know is that we always will have like a few percentages that we cannot scan, because it can be quite complicated. So a thing that I didn't mention for the OCR principle is also, if our algorithm didn't find the correct result, well, how can you as a user learn the algorithm in order to become better. But basically the only thing that you have to do is fill in manually what you should have filled in when you wanted to validate the invoice. And behind the scenes, when you will validate that invoice, Odoo will try to see that the information that you filled in, if he found it somewhere else, so that he can learn it, okay, the amount excluding VAT was not 100 but 200, so he found it and he will learn from it. But even then, if he didn't find the amount, we cannot do more than the fields that we found. So in that case, if the second time that you scanned an invoice was not perfectly recognized, don't be scared, because it can still happen that it's recognized, because at that moment we create basically a ticket at the developer at Odoo, and that developer will create, as we call, a template for that supplier. So it's not anymore the algorithm that will take over, but it's a human person, a developer, that will take over the invoice of the supplier and will say, well, the vendor information is here, the amount exclusive VAT is there, total amount is there, the date is there, the reference is there, and so he will select himself on the invoice where the information can be found, and he will save that template. And as from the moment that he saved the template, we push the template to all our users so that everyone can take benefit of it. So that was it. I think we covered all the questions. I don't know if we can close here, but anyway, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope you start Odoo if you're not using Odoo yet, and don't hesitate to like this webinar, to share our webinar, and to like our page. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.